In recent weeks, legislators in Washington have been working to change the way federal agencies enforce health, safety, and environmental laws. At long last, legislation providing relief from excessive government regulations is moving through Congress. For businesses and individuals who have suffered at the hand of the regulatory system's long arm, this is welcome news indeed. Under the current system, compliance with numerous and sometimes frivolous regulations is costly in terms of time and money.
According to the federal government itself, about 6.6 billion hours will be spent this year just filling out government paperwork. That's a lot of time. And time is money. And not only time is money, but it's a headache to do that, especially when you're getting redundant information requests over and over again.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce estimates that in 1993, the nation's regulatory system cost Americans about $581 billion. That's about $5,900 per household. To further illustrate the point, the Chamber offers this example. A simple hamburger is subject to 41,000 federal and state regulations, ranging from the grazing practices of cattle to conditions in the restaurant where the burger is served. Few would argue that 41,000 regulations for a hamburger is excessive. By the same token, most would agree that basic regulatory standards are necessary. But today, some governmental agencies, like the Food and Drug Administration, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and the Environmental Protection Agency, are out of control in their regulatory pursuits. These agencies are strangling businesses and individuals in a web of rigid rules, paperwork, and fines. For American businesses to succeed, regulatory agencies must be reined in.
The problem is that the regulatory agencies have the potential to be like wild weeds, that you can never quite pull out all the roots, and they grow back faster than you pull them out. And we're at a point now where the growth has come back with such a vengeance, even after 12 years of Republican administrations trying to, quote, restrain the regulators, that if we don't do a good enough job of pruning it now and restraining it, another 20 years from now, the growth will completely entangle the business community.
Are we looking around?
Mr. and Mrs. Bob McMacken know from first-hand experience about the excessive nature of certain governmental regulations. In 1988, they purchased property in the Pocono Mountains, where they planned to retire. They obtained all of the appropriate land and building permits, hired local builders, and built their home.
We went to the township, we got a permit, building permit, we got a permit from Arrowhead Lake Association, we got a sewer permit, and ultimately, when the house was finished, we got a certificate of occupancy.
But just as they had begun to settle into a comfortable retirement, they received an alarming letter from government regulators saying their home had been built on federally protected wetlands.
Well, out of the blue, we got a letter from the Army Corps of Engineers, and this is over 4 years after we bought the lot and started building, telling us that we had violated the Clean Water Act and we had illegally filled the ground.
In order to remedy the situation, the McMackens were told they'd have to undo all the work they had done on their land. That meant unearthing the trees and shrubs they had planted and replacing them with greenery specified by the EPA. Afterwards, the land would essentially be returned to the federal government. Compliance would mean the McMackens would have no developable property beyond the 5 feet surrounding their home.
We have a property that is not marketable at the present time, but more so we find that because of this, and it's an intangible, because of this, we find that we're not going there as often. Now, I don't know if it makes sense, but we don't feel the place is ours.
The McMackens have been fighting for their right to use their land the way they want. To date, they have spent about $5,000 and countless hours in this effort. But the time and money spent doesn't compare with the emotional price they've paid fighting a battle with the EPA that has yet to be resolved. John McCurdy of Lubec, Maine, also knows about battling federal regulators. His fight was with the Food and Drug Administration a few years ago. Back in 1990, his business, the McCurdy Fish Company, was thriving. The 88-year-old family business was shipping 150,000 pounds of smoked herring fillets to distributors in the United States. The business was bringing in gross annual revenues of around $250,000. An outbreak of botulism completely unrelated to McCurdy's Fish Company drew attention to the fishing industry from the Food and Drug Administration. The nationwide investigation resulted in a sweeping regulation requiring all fisheries, large and small, to use special equipment to clean and smoke fish.
In the May of 1990, an investigator from the Food and Drug Administration from the Augusta, Maine office came to my property and informed me that from now on the process that we were doing was not going to be legal in FDA, or Food and Drug Administration standards.
An FDA investigation of the McCurdy Fish Company revealed that his practices were completely safe and sanitary. And although in nearly 100 years the company never shipped a piece of bad fish, he too was subject to the regulation.
We're going to have to change our process from getting the fish after they were salted and smoked to getting or eviscerating the fish before they were salted and smoked, a process that was just so costly and it's so prohibitive that we just could not continue in business.
Compliance with the rule would have cost Mr. McCurdy approximately $300,000. A large fishery might have been able to pay that amount, but Mr. McCurdy couldn't afford it. Left with few choices, John McCurdy called it quits. Today, thousands of small business owners around the nation live in fear of losing their livelihoods because of a regulation that is currently on the horizon. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, proposed an indoor air quality regulation that will essentially ban smoking in all indoor workplaces, including offices, hotels, restaurants, bars, casinos, and other entertainment establishments. Any place where anyone works, perhaps even in private homes. Smoking could only take place when an employee was not working, and then only in separately enclosed rooms, maintained at negative pressure, with separate ventilation and exhaust. Construction estimates for such rooms are as high as $50,000 per room, with a potential cost to American businesses of $150 billion. Few businesses could afford the high cost of constructing smoking rooms that comply with the proposed standard, especially small businesses like restaurants.
Under OSHA's proposed rule, you can build a separate room, maintain it at a negative pressure, and exhaust it separately to the outside. People can go in there to smoke, but the restaurant can't serve food or drinks, bring people their checks, remove dirty dishes, wipe off tables and counters, or in short, do any of the things you have to do in a restaurant. The rule in a nutshell says you can't smoke where you work or work where you smoke. How could you serve smokers under those conditions? Obviously you couldn't.
Marion Novak of Salt Lake City, Utah, has learned about the negative consequences of smoking bans. The state implemented one on January 1st of this year.
When this new law went into effect and my business dropped rapidly, I got very angry and very frustrated because I always thought if you were honest and worked hard, you had a chance in America to make a decent living. And apparently that wasn't so. Through no fault of my own, I all of a sudden found myself facing having to close, losing my restaurant, losing my home, because we could not meet our obligations, our bills. It was horrible.
Other local restaurateurs have experienced the same problems.
Before the smoking bill went through, I would say probably through lunch we would seat about 100 people. After the smoking bill went through lunch we would have about 5 tables, maybe 20 people.
When the smoking ban went into effect, we weren't really aware of what the consequences were going to be, but our business dropped off about 60% from day one.
Many establishments are suffering under the Utah ban, and many more are at risk if the OSHA proposed ban goes into effect. That's why American businesses are speaking out against a regulation they view as overly broad, financially burdensome, and unfair to owners and managers who want to operate their businesses the way they see fit, according to their customers' demands. All types of American businesses will be better able to satisfy their customers' needs if they are relieved of excessive regulatory restraints and penalties. In addition, they will be better able to create jobs and contribute to the economy. At the federal level, the wheels are in motion to reform the system that has threatened the livelihoods of people like Bob McMacken and John McCurdy and small business owners throughout the United States. Now it's up to state and local officials to follow suit. Given that government shares the goal of improving America's economic conditions, it makes sense for regulatory agencies at all levels of government to work with business, to be part of a solution for America, not part of a problem.